Hey, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. We are talking about a Cubs winner on this beautiful Sunday afternoon if you are in the Chicagoland area. But let's turn it over to somebody not currently in the Chicagoland area, my co-host for today's show, Mr. Juice. Juice, how you doing, buddy? How's the weather up there in Grand Rapids?
Nice and sunny. I'll say that the broadcast team up here, as you know, to watch the games, I have to get MLB TV because Marquee does not extend to Grand Rapids, Michigan. Hopefully one day it does. But with that said, I was stuck watching the Detroit feed because of the stupid MLB blackout. And let me just say that Matt Shepard and Kirk Gibson are their announcing team, and they make my ears bleed. And they actually made the ESPN crew sound interesting. Oof. And I didn't think – so let me just say before we even start this thing, we should be really thankful that the Cubs have pretty much always had good broadcasting teams. Absolutely. Because I feel bad. Usually you feel bad for Detroit no matter what because, man, look at that city and look what happens with their sports teams. But, God, if I had to listen to that for, a ton of time, forget that. Oh, yeah. It was so awful.
Our boy Baseball Booge agrees with you. He says Detroit's announcers are brutal in all caps.
Kirk Gibson, at the end of the game, the Cubs are winning 5-0. 2 outs, and they had the guys, on base, and he's still thinking they're going to come back and win. He's like,
I mean, it is kind of his job to be kind of like that homer,
but also
we can do this.
Yeah, right. But also Len Casper, I feel like when he was here, and Boog and Jim Deshaies, and the guys that have followed before them did a really good job of being critical of the team and not just playing we could still win this card. And that's just, you know what I mean? When you didn't play well, and obviously Detroit didn't show all day that they could score on Kyle Hendricks, and you're down 5-0 in the eighth, and you're thinking, that you have a chance. I mean, I get it. It's part of their job, and they got to make it interesting to keep people viewing, but they don't do a good job of that anyway. So, yeah, it was pretty bad. Kirk Gibson, just needs to retire. That's got to be it for him, man. He's at the point where his announcing is so bad, he's making that Dennis Eckersley home run when he was a Dodger look bad. That's you know what I'm saying? You're overshadowing your awesome MLB historic moment by just putting out this terrible broadcast performance every single game, which I was really mad. And MLB fixed that, man. The blackout thing's ridiculous. Pay $200 for the season, and I have to be stuck. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I feel that, man. And Baseball Booze once again jumping in. Kirk Gibson is impossibly boring. That is a very good way of describing it. But I will tell you what, Juice, we kind of joked before you and I jumped on the mic today that today's game was a little boring, but boring in a good way because we joke here at Cubs on Tap when Kyle Hendricks pitches and it's a boring day to watch the game, that means he's absolutely dealing. And I think that's a great place for us to start today because a guy who he got a little bad luck in that Pittsburgh game, didn't throw awful, especially coming off of that really great performance he had against the Dodgers in game 1 of the doubleheader back when they played at Wrigley Field. But today, man, he looked absolutely incredible. Final stat line because of the absolute bullshit overturn call on what should have been the game-ending double play. Hendricks officially goes 8 innings, 8+. Obviously faced the first 2 batters of the 9th. 8 total hits. Sadly, that earned run does count against Kyle, but he did not walk anybody, and he struck out 8. Also, fun fact about his performance today, 7 strikeouts of his 8 today were looking, which is actually the league high for this season so far. No pitcher has had more than 6 in one game. So Kyle Hendricks just making people look silly, finessing his way around the strike zone, Juice. And like I said, man, I think that's a great place to start. I mean, how excited were you to see this out of Kyle Hendricks today? Because I know I was fired up.
He's trending in the right direction, I think. The last 3 starts have really been really solid. Even with the 6-5 loss against Pittsburgh, was that his last start?
I believe so.
So, yeah. But he looked really Kyle Hendricks today. And the good news is that he was getting ahead. He had the fastball. He had the sinker. That changeup plays so much better when he's able to locate the fastball. Was really solid today. And while I was listening to this boring game with boring announcers, I kind of realized that the Cubs are probably dead last in the league with boring wins. So it was good. Like you said, it was a good switch to have a game where it felt like it was in hand the whole time. Going into today's game, they played 9 in a row that were was it 9 out of 10 that were 1-run games, or 8 out of 9? It was around there.
I believe so. I'll confirm that for you.
Yeah, I know that they played a lot of recent 1-run games lately, and that's great. It's exciting baseball. Makes you watch all the way to the end. But I'll take a 5-1 win, which really 5-0. That pity run at the end. Who cares? It got Kirk Gibson excited, but it didn't get any of us. We kind of figured this one was in the bag from the 7th inning on, because Kyle was at 66 pitches. And I think that's the other thing that was really understated, was the fact of how efficient he was. I think 3 innings today, he needed like 9 or less pitches to get out of the inning. That's pure Kyle Hendricks, making it go up there and inducing weak contact. And good for him, man. It's good to see him kind of settle into that ace role now. Hopefully this is what we're going to see from here on out, because the pitching has been as late. And you're going to need him every 5th day to be the stopgap. John Lester, Jake Arrieta back in 2015, where that maybe we didn't win, 2 or 3 in a row, but if we win, maybe we lost 3 in a row or 2 in a row. But when it got to like Jake Day or Lester, you felt like you had a really good chance to win a ball game. And that's what we as Cubs fans need to hope for not John Lester, but for Kyle Hendricks for the future, because it's just when he's got it going, and what we've seen out of Zach Davies recently, and obviously Edward Alzolay has been really solid. Maybe you start to kind of form that 3 with Jake, obviously coming back and working his way back into the rotation after the thumb issue. But maybe we can get some good starting pitching performances in the next couple.
Absolutely. And Kozuna77 dropped in our comments. The 8K, 0 walks is more like the real Kyle Hendricks. Had everything working off the sinker, and he was locating. Absolutely agree, man. He was dialed in today. Like, that is what we expect when we see Kyle Hendricks. For those, I'm sure most people listening to this have at least heard of Pitching Ninja on Twitter. If you're not following him, follow him. It's such a fun account to follow. But he today posted 2 of Kyle's 2-seamers today that just painted the outside of the strike zone. And that is exactly what we love and enjoy about Kyle Hendricks when he is pitching, because when he's able to locate, I don't care that he doesn't throw 90. It doesn't fucking matter, because he just gets the job done. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what you need. Juice, I do want to confirm the fact that you mentioned too. Entering today's game, 8 of the last 9 for the Cubs were 1-run ball games. Yeah, 8 of the last 9. The only one that wasn't was that win on Friday in Detroit. The 4-2 win was the first time.
Still 2-run game. You're looking
still
at
close. Absolutely,
you're looking at a bloop and a bomb until you're tied again. So or a walk and a bomb. And that's these Cubs teams. It's great to play 1-run games, but with that said, the good teams in the MLB beat you by 7 or 6. That's I think what we're kind of watching with the Cubs. I'm hoping to see more of that, because then they can start to cement themselves as maybe one of the better teams in the Central. And then once you get into that, playoff, you can spin the wheel and see what happens. But they need to have more boring wins. And I know that it's hard to win a baseball game and you take them how you want them, but it's just so great when you can save the bullpen for a day, like Kyle did. Obviously only they had to go to Winkler in the 9th. Can't talk.
It's Sunday, man. It's okay. It's been a long weekend.
And so they had to go to him for the 9th to get the last 3. But hey, save the bullpen after the 9-8 game yesterday that they burned through a lot of the pen, saved some arms, and it was good. Great win today. Good to see Ian Happ maybe getting hot. Really kind of starting to swing the bat a little better since coming back, and KB's been KB for the whole season, and this lineup really seems to be more professional as they get healthier.
Yeah, and I agree with you, man. And it's so nice to see this Cubs team really top to bottom now being able to hit, right? This was something I think that last season we saw kind of the vice versa. It was the top of the order, had a lot of struggles really the whole season until they moved Happ and Hayward up the lineup. But it was really when those guys were in the bottom of the lineup that they were just absolutely mashing baseballs. And that was when Ian Happ got off to such a hot start. He was hitting in like the 7 and 8 hole most nights, when he had his hot streak. But I agree with you today, man. I mean, 3 for 4 for Ian Happ, 2 runs scored, and 2 RBIs, obviously the solo home run. had a double there on that little bloop that scored another. And then his aggressive base running from second base when, Detroit's trying to turn a double play to end the inning. He just keeps running, forces the first baseman to make a terrible throw. He scores relatively easily given the circumstances, and it helps that KB legged it out. What would have been a double play. KB, unfortunately, 0 for today with 3 strikeouts, but he did get that RBI because of Happ's base running. So still great stuff. But yeah, loved seeing Ian Happ improve today, but just up and down the lineup. I mean, Bodie had a big hit, obviously driving in Duffy. Duffy had another hit today, and he scored 2 runs. So seeing him continue to just put together solid at-bats and be a quality player is great. 2 for 5 for both Rizzo and Javi today. Unfortunately, Javi did strike out 3 times, but I mean, I'll take a 2 for 5. Would like to see him maybe only strike out once and maybe even put a I know I'm going to say this. And I'm going to regret it, but I would like to see Javi walk. And I know that requires me to do one of these.
Yeah. That's...
every time he does and drink and take a sip of my beer. But I mean, it would be nice to see. But overall, I agree with you, man. Just it's nice to really today offensively a good team outing. But 100% was Ian Happ was the star offensively today because seeing him get back going, especially as you mentioned, now coming off the IL, the Cubs are starting to get healthy, which is huge because they have a lot of big games coming up. They don't have an off day now until next Monday. So not tomorrow, the following Monday, they will be off. But now they've got 4 with the Washington Nationals at home coming up here at Wrigley. And then they have 3 in St. Louis next weekend. So a very, very, very important week for the Cubs coming up. And so them getting healthy and then those guys that are getting healthy, getting going is huge as well. Jake looked pretty good on Friday night. And then, Nico has looked fairly solid, hasn't done much with the bat yet, but the glove is still there, as well as, now with Ian Happ having his monster day. A couple comments want to address here that we're getting in our feed. Baseball Booze, you didn't get to watch the whole game. How many of Happ's hits were off a lefty? All of them, I believe, actually. He was hitting from the right side pretty much the entire day. The double was off of Boyd, and the home run was off of Boyd. So actually all 3 of his hits today came from him hitting on the right side, which is also huge because, again, a guy that, despite being a switch hitter, has always been better historically batting lefty versus righty. All 3 of his 4 hits today coming on the right side. So that is big as well. And then Cody, our boy, good weekend to write a Matt Duffy article. Yes, it is, sir. And for those that don't know what we're talking about, go over to www.ontapsportsnet.com and check out Cody's article about Matt Duffy and really him making a case for himself to be a part of this team long term. So, Juice, I'll turn it back over to you. But again, we joke that boring games are good games, and when we're like struggling to come up with things to talk about, it means the Cubs are winning by a lot of runs, and sometimes that's okay. It's okay to have a little bit of a shorter show after a 5-1 win. So I'll turn it back over to you. But any other things that from today's game that were really noticeable for you, and we can kind of bounce off of some of those ideas, and then we can look ahead to the crazy week coming up for the Cubs.
Yeah, I was actually, you kind of stole my thunder there with the right side Ian Happ. That's the like you said, he's better from the left side, and when he's going righty, you think it transfer over to the left side as well. Be good to get him going because he's a big mainstay in this lineup. It was good just to take 2 out of 3 from Detroit. I know that's probably a team you should sweep, but hey, winning series. Hey, win road trips, win series. Absolutely. And then, that's the key. Didn't win a road trip this week, but go home, get some home cooking, and let's stack some wins together.
Yeah, well said, man. I 100% agree with you. I think definitely if we're all sitting here and being honest, I know we didn't really touch on yesterday's game. The Cubs really should have won that game. I mean, let's be honest. They absolutely should have. It felt like they had it the whole game. Yeah, it was a lot of back and forth. Williams obviously gets beat up early, but they were in it. And yeah, they had a bad day. They lost. It is what it is. But like you said, Juice, they come back today, get a huge victory today. Take 2 of 3. You win a series. That's all you can ask for. And yeah, I mean, a 2-3 road trip. Obviously, you would have preferred above 500 versus below 500. But that being said, still not too terrible. I mean, even though the Cubs are 19-20, ladies and gentlemen, they're still 3rd place in the NL Central. And they're only 3.5 back of the Cardinals and only a half game back of the Brewers. So they're really not in a bad position right now, despite being a game under 500, with game number 40 coming up tomorrow. So
I think you can make the argument that the Cubs haven't played their best baseball yet either.
They absolutely haven't.
It's in there. It's just a matter of all of this is going to be sorted out. We're 25% through the season.
Mhm.
So let's see, where these games stack up for the homestand here. Hopefully they can beat up on the Nationals, take 3 out of 4, sweep maybe the 4 to make you feel better about, not taking the road trip when you're playing, teams like Cleveland who don't score very often, and Detroit who they're not trying to win. They're not trying to win baseball games right now. But with that said, it's going back home, and hopefully this is the start of the Cubs' best run of baseball in 2021.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. And I think so far, the only other things I can really bring up about today's game, obviously Ian Happ stealing the show offensively was big. Kyle Hendricks getting back, definitely the 2 top storylines for me today. But really, again, something I want to reiterate is this Cubs team's getting healthy, and they're getting healthy at the right time, because now you're starting to see on the schedule some of these tougher teams, right? They had 3 with Pittsburgh, 2 with Cleveland, 3 with Detroit. So that was kind of your weaker part of the schedule. You could afford to be a little beat up and be, hurt during those games. Now you have 4 with, let's be honest, still a very good Nationals team. Sure, they're in last place in the NL East, but that's still a very talented roster. You have 3 with the Cardinals coming up, who are still currently first place in the NL Central. And then you also have teams like the Reds, who, doesn't matter how bad the Reds are, they always play the Cubs hard. You got teams like the Padres twice, I believe, actually. They'll see the Padres, it's like 6 times within like 10 or 11 days maybe, or something crazy like that. And they got the Giants, who are just out of nowhere the best team in the NL West this year, which makes absolutely zero fucking sense. But here we are. It's 2021. We've learned that if 2020 taught us anything, it's weird shit can happen, and it can be just, it is what it is. But, so they got a lot of good teams coming up. But he got Nico Horner back, and he looks good. The bat will come once he gets hot again. He just needs to keep seeing some live pitching. You got Jock Peterson back, who, sure, he went 0 for today, but shit, he's been really good lately, and that's a key bat as well. So now that you're getting healthy, Happ back today has a monster day. Arrieta came back and had a good start. You got Kyle looking good again. You got Davies looking good again. Really just feels like Williams is kind of the only guy still trying to figure his shit out in this rotation. So, and the bullpen is still the bullpen. I mean, they've still been fantastic. Winkler gets the job done today. Keegan Thompson's been great. Justin Steele's been great. All of these names that are coming out of the Cubs bullpen. So reiterating for all the Cubs fans out there, that's kind of my closing thought on today's game is, yes, they got a big dub win. 5-1 is a nice outing. But holy shit, this team's getting healthy, and guys are starting to put it together at the right time. And Juice, I think that what you said is perfectly encompassing of today's game. The Cubs have still not played their best baseball. And if they start to play their best baseball based on what this roster looks like top to bottom, it's going to be a hell of a summer for Cubs fans, because they're going to be in it. They're going to be in the competition for the NL Central. I want to celebrate Independence Day with a notification on my phone on the 4th of July that says the Cubs have extended Chris Bryant. I want a lot of things this summer, but as long as the Cubs are in it, they're not going to be selling off pieces at the deadline, because they have a chance to still make the playoffs. And as we're kind of starting to see with this team, a lot of unsung heroes coming out of the woodwork so far. Who the fuck knows when they get to October? Sure, do I think they win the World Series? Probably not. There's too many good teams in the NL that'll probably block them. But could they steal a game or a series even potentially in the playoffs? Sure. Why not?
Baseball's weird, man. You just said that the Giants are leading the division out there in the West. So anything can happen. With that said, what a perfect time to play your best baseball with all the teams that you described that are coming up on the schedule, and put some respect on that name for the Cubs. And make the media and the national markets, look and go, oh, man, they're putting something together there that I didn't think they were going to this year, by maybe going in and taking some games from San Diego and taking 2 out of 3 from the Cardinals, and just taking care of, teams like Washington. Like you said, good baseball team, but not maybe playing their best. So let's keep it that way. Let's still go in there, get some wins, and try to snowball some things together. And maybe by then, like you said, on that July deadline, maybe the Cubs are looking at, their first place, and everybody's looking at them. Hey, what are you going to do? Who are you going to add? What can you do to, because that's the other thing too. They have the prospects to move some guys and to bring in some talent that they can extend, because there's a lot of money coming off the books. Yeah. So the positive of it is, it's a lot of these guys that they could trade for won't be one-year rentals. If they can get a good deal for a starting pitcher, maybe a top of the line guy, or who knows, if by the end of it, maybe another solid bullpen arm that wants to be in that pen to be a staple for the 8th and for the 7th. You know,
Sure.
who's to say that, you know, maybe they go out and just add a bat, you know, a guy that they can, you know, put out there maybe in right field or plays the outfield, whatever. You know, that way they can move some guys around and extend. And I think that's the key, because for forever during these runs, it was, you knew these guys were one of your rentals because the Cubs didn't have, you know, the financial side of it figured out. But now, as money comes off the books, they can start to invest a little bit more into the future and lock up some guys that, you know, have talent. Maybe, like I said, starter, add a bat, you know, add an arm for the bullpen. Who knows? But like I said, with the money coming off the books, it'll be a good opportunity if they are looking at first place with the minor league system that they've kind of started to build. And maybe, who knows, maybe you find the sucker at the poker table to trade you somebody for the future.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. I'm really looking forward to seeing Nicholas Castellanos back in a Cubs uniform after the trade deadline. I think he's going to look great. They can have him for long term. They'll have the money to pay him. The DH is coming to the NL. It's perfect. It's a perfect case scenario to bring Nick back to Chicago. But no, all seriousness. Yeah, hey, I gotta, again, for those, you know, loyal listeners, you know, it's not an episode of Cubs on Tap with Ron Luce if I don't bring up Nicholas Castellanos. So at least there's that. We got that out of the way. But in all seriousness, Juice, I absolutely agree with you. I think if they're hanging around the top of the division, they have a very legitimate reason, especially if they, again, start to play really good baseball. They have a reason to potentially be buyers at the deadline. They don't have to go ape shit. They don't have to go crazy. And I agree with what you said. They can make a trade at the deadline for a guy who has control beyond this season. And they can, you know, or a guy that's ready to get paid and deserves to get paid, and the Cubs think they can pay him because, like you said, the Cubs have a ton of money that is going to free up after this 2021 season. Obviously, you would hope some of that money goes to guys like Anthony Rizzo and Chris Bryant. Maybe if you want to get really ambitious and you extend a guy like a Wilson Contreras, or you extend a guy like an Ian Happ, depending on how their seasons progress from here on out, who knows? But there are a lot of options for this Cubs team as long as they're hanging around and still in it in the division. And I think they will be, especially as they play the Cardinals more. You can beat them up for a couple of series. You have an opportunity still come, you know, the 4th of July to say, hey, we're, you know, maybe we are in 3rd place, but we're a game and a half back of the Cardinals. Like, we're in this thing. We have a chance to win. We have a chance to win the division and potentially make a playoff run. And again, yes, I think that is the perfect opportunity then if they see that and they say, shit, you know, we could get a top of the line guy to go along with some of these guys. Because let's be honest, I think some of their arms that are truly going to be starters for this team in the long term probably need another year or two in minor league ball. 2020 was a huge setback because of no minor league season. So guys like Cole Franklin, guys like Ryan Jensen, you know, some of those names that are there, Braylon Marquez obviously is another one. Some of those names that could be starters for this team, you know, in circa 2023, 2024 and beyond, they're probably still a few years away. So if you can get a top of the line guy that will help this team now and later when some of those other arms come along, and you still have probably a Kyle Hendricks and like an Adbert Alzolay as a part of that rotation, then you really set yourself up well to have cheap pitching outside of maybe 1 or 2 guys. And then you can pay a couple of your bats, but you also still have enough talent in the pipeline right now coming that as long as you're not going too crazy and dealing too much of it, those are also guys that'll be cheap and cost-effective coming in too. Now you have all this money to play with. And let's be honest, Wrigley's going to still sell out as soon as they let that place go back to 100%. Hell, they're already going back to 60% now come Memorial Day weekend. You don't think that place isn't going to sell out when it's 100% all summer? Phew, come on. As long as they're in it. And even if they weren't in it, it still will.
It's still going to.
So, you know, they're really in a good position right now. Again, if they're going to get their struggles out and kind of work through this like new identity as a team, because again, I'm going to go back to it. Today was game 99 of David Ross's managerial career. That was a regular season game, at least. You know, game 101 if you count the 2 playoff games last season. The dude's still a rookie manager. They're still trying to figure out their identity. They're still trying to become this like complete ball club that I think, and I think you agree with me, Juice, that we all know they can become. They can become this, you know, not just power hitting and strikeout team. They can hit for average. Guys like Matt Duffy, Peterson, so on and so forth. They have so many guys that this team can just put together. And as long as these guys find their rhythm and find their role within the team, this can be a very dangerous team come late July, early August, and into September. I mean, they have the ability to do it. The talent is there. I think there's just a lot of guys still finding their roles within this team because there are so many new faces. Even dating back, if we compare what we really should do, compare 2019 to 2021, right? The last full true season. It's a very different looking Cubs team. So guys are still trying to find their places, and obviously with a new manager too, that's something that's worth considering. Tomorrow's going to be the 100th regular season managerial game for David Ross. So that's worth noting. And it's actually going to be a pretty special 100th game too, Juice. So are you ready to talk a little bit about Monday's game and put this Detroit series in the past?
Always ready to put Detroit behind me.
I love that, and I agree with that because as we all know here in Chicago, any beloved Blackhawks fan will tell you Detroit sucks, and that applies to all sporting teams. I don't care what league it is in. But let's talk about Monday's game, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a good one. For starters, happy early birthday to Cody. It will be Cody Del Mendo's birthday. He will be at the game, so be on the lookout for content from his account as the Cubs welcome the Washington Nationals to town. And let's be honest, everybody has this one marked on your calendar or at least circled in some way, and we're going to touch on that here in a second. But to get the details out of the way, the Nationals will come to Wrigley Field here in beautiful Chicago, Illinois on May 17th for a 6:40 Central Daylight Time first pitch against your Chicago Cubs. If you are in the Nationals market, you can listen to this game on 106.7 The Fan and MASN, which is, I believe, the I'm assuming it's like the Maryland Area Sports Network. I think is probably what that has to. At least it makes sense in my head. If somebody knows otherwise, please correct me.
We know it wouldn't be Montreal. So.
Definitely will not be that. Yeah, the Expos are unfortunately they're not the Expos anymore. But that is a beautiful uniform, and they should wear them as a throwback if they could. But if you're in the Chicago market, it's the usual suspects: WRTO 1200, 670 The Score, and Marquee Sports Network for your viewing purposes. This is where the bullshit starts, ladies and gentlemen. This is where I say we have to keep this one in the books because not only is Kyle Schwarber making his return tomorrow to Soldier Field for the first time since being let go by the Chicago Cubs, Johnny Lester is starting tomorrow. MLB.com says TBD, but we all know that's a load of BS. Because John Lester has more or less confirmed he will be starting on Monday. So it's the opener. It's going to be a very emotional game. Obviously, David Ross, as we mentioned, it'll be his 100th regular season managerial game. And it's against his old buddy, Johnny Lester, on the other team's mound. So that's going to be pretty interesting. But for the Cubs, though, it's really kind of a nostalgia versus the future because Adbert Alzolay will trot out for the Cubs tomorrow. He had a quality start on Tuesday. His last time out, he allowed 3 runs in 6 innings in that Cleveland loss. And he struck out 6 and did not walk a single batter. He has been really good. Total numbers for the season, he is 1-3. I don't think that record is indicative of how he's actually pitched. But he has a 4.50 ERA and 36 Ks to this point. So, Juice, I will turn it over to you, sir. Little preview for tomorrow's game. I'll let you take it away with if you want to dive into some of the Schwarber and Lester returning stuff, and then would love to get a fly the W pick from you before we get out of here for tomorrow's game.
Sure. Yeah. No. Like you said, new school versus old school, right? It's good for Johnny Lester coming back. I do wish that, like you said, they were moving to 60%. I wish it was 60% for tomorrow. I wished that timing worked out because I think John Lester got the raw end of the deal for not having that last moment due to the pandemic at Wrigley. Absolutely. For his thing. And I know the Cubs will do their best, and they will put their best people on it to do their best to show their appreciation for what he's done for the Cubs and for the community, and just for Chicago in general. Which it'll be great to see Johnny on the mound. I do hope that they have another boring win tomorrow, though, and can. With that said, I hate for his homecoming to be that they hit him around, but it'd be nice if they did. Let's get to that first inning. Let's have the video board go off, the thank you, whatever. But once the ball's put in play, I hope they chase him in the third. That's just sorry. Hey, I hope that the same goes for Kyle Schwarber. They'll put a great video together for both of them, and I'm sure that Cody among the 20 is still 20%, or is it 30%? Whatever. What's that Wrigley right now?
Yeah, it's about 10, a little over 10,000 fans per game right now.
they'll definitely be on their feet, standing out, cheering for him. But with that said, I hope that, and with that said, John Lester, he said it before. This year, he's kind of had to, kind of reinvent himself, get a little lucky in terms of, he doesn't have the velocity anymore. He's got to be creative to get through, some innings. But with that said, I do hope that they end up, chasing him early. I hope he gets the right standing O, and the Cubs can take a moment there for him. And I hope that they're winning 8-0. We can, have a Schwarber nostalgia home run, maybe on top of the Budweiser board just for old time's sakes, but make it a solo shot, and I'll take an 8-1 win all day. With that said, I do think that for my Fly the W player of the game, I'm going to go with Javi Baez. I think that this matchup is kind of good for him. I know that he hasn't faced John. Obviously he's been a teammate of his, but I think his swing and his, where John's at is in his career. I think Javi is going to get the best of him. I think Javi goes deep tomorrow. I really do.
Nice. I like that pick at your Fly the W, and I absolutely agree with everything you said. Before I dive into mine, I would like to read off Cody's comments because, ladies and gentlemen, we're in luck because the Cubs are undefeated all time when myself, this is Cody, and the lady attend, giving the biggest standing O for John. And then he chimes in and also adds and Kyle. And we would expect nothing less. It's gonna be a fun game. It really is, because like you said, the nostalgia of John Lester returning, the nostalgia of Kyle Schwarber. I don't care how many years those guys go on to play with whatever forsaken teams. I don't really care. They're going to forever be Cubs legends. And anybody that's going to be a naysayer and say, how are they Cubs legends? John Lester is arguably the greatest free agent acquisition this team has ever had in its history, if you look at it, because he came in, and that really was the turning point. When he signed with the Cubs over all the other teams willing to pay him tons and tons of money, Cubs fans said, holy shit, they mean business and they're ready to win. And that's exactly what they did. The World Series, incredible seasons as a Cub. I mean, honestly, and this good. Actually, you know what? If you don't like it, tough shit. Rip me on Twitter for it. I think in the future, they need to dual retire the number 34 for Kerry Wood and John Lester, because I don't give a shit that he only played 6 years with the Cubs. He coming to Chicago was the single most important piece to start off what was the golden era of Cubs baseball to this point in the team's history. Because you can go back and look, ladies and gentlemen, you can tell me how great the 80s were. You can tell me how great it was in the 1940s. I don't give a fuck, because the Cubs had never had that much single success year to year for that long of a stretch like they did until Kyle Schwarber and guys like John Lester and Chris Bryant and all of them came up. Any guy that was on that 2016 team is forever going to be celebrated by Cubs fans. And if you disagree otherwise, you can go jump in the lake. And I will say that in honor of our buddy Cody. You can go swim in Lake Michigan when it's too cold, because I don't really care what you think. But
yeah, and I don't think it should be understated what Kyle Schwarber did for that World Series run either. There's no shot in hell they win 3 out of 4 in Cleveland without the DH bat of Kyle Schwarber. There's no way that they do that. And just the tenacity and his rehab to get back, just to play in that series, the taking batting practice and him coming with blisters all over his hands when he got there and still putting up the numbers he did without seeing live pitching for 8 months? Yeah. 6 months, whatever it was. I mean, it's unseen. It's freakish. And I think it's definitely shouldn't be understated what he did. I know he never turned into little Babe Ruth, but with that said, he won a championship here, and he was one of the mainstays and the key contributors to making sure that happened. Because like I said, they don't win a World Series without that bat in that lineup. Absolutely. And I think a lot of Cub fans and around baseball, they'll chalk him up in Cubs lore as somebody who didn't live up to the expectations. But if you look through the smaller magnifying glass, you can really see what Kyle did for Chicago, for the community, and how much he meant to that World Series team. That team was so close with each other, and for him to go through the grueling pain to rehab that quickly, and the dedication to set a date that I'm beating this quicker than anybody has before. And not only that, when I get there, I'm not just a pawn in the lineup. I'm gonna come out and contribute. And one of my favorite Cubs of all time is Kyle Schwarber. I'm not gonna lie, he is. He always has been. He's that goofy big guy that was never meant to be a left fielder, but figured it out. And just was a great glue guy. I think that's the very unstated part about his personality and how much his teams like him, his teammates. They want to be around him in the front office and what he does for the team and the community. That's another thing too. I think that both these guys were mainstays of Chicago for the 5 years that they were here. And it's just great to see them come back, them to have, gigs still in the MLB, because it's a lot of times, you get to the end of that career, like for John Lester, or, you're at the turning point for Kyle Schwarber, and teams aren't willing to give you that chance, and good for Washington for ponying it up and, giving them the chance to produce and to keep their MLB career going. And like I said, I wish them the best in their career, and I thank them for what they did. But let's go win 8-1 tomorrow, and I'll be a happy guy.
Hell yeah, man. And wow. I mean, that was perfect. I'm probably going to clip as much as that as I can. And that's getting blasted out tomorrow because that's so well said. Like, I think that was really the part that I wanted to touch on too, Juice, was the amount of impact that Lester and Schwarber had off the field as well in Chicago cannot be understated. Those guys were just entrenched in the Chicago community. I mean, look what John Lester did. As a thank you to Cubs fans. I mean, he spent thousands of dollars on beer for, fans going to various bars, and, a Schwarber with everything he did off the field for like the firefighters and things like that in Chicago. And I mean, those guys again, and shout out to our friend of the show, Director Morel, Dom Fred, but the first Morale athlete that collabed with him was Kyle Schwarber. And it speaks to really what those guys were off the field as well as on the field for the team. I agree with you, man. It just forever loved. And Schwarber for me, like, I always kind of saw myself in Schwarber. I was never a baseball player, but like, I was always just kind of that big goofy guy. I was the glue guy. Like, I played college football, but I never started. I was a reserve guy. And and I too had an ACL tear that I came back early from and just rehabbed like hell to, at that time to preserve my senior football season. So, he really was a guy I related to and always had an appreciation for, and I still do. And I love everything that you said as well, Juice, because it perfectly encompasses, what those two guys were to the city of Chicago. So I hope they get the fucking biggest one imaginable. And you know what? I hope Washington, comes back maybe next year if Schwarber's still there, or if they're both still there, or wherever they are. And hopefully it's a full building and they can get another O that they absolutely deserve for everything they did for the Chicago Cubs. But it's going to be a fun one, and I agree with you, man. I still hope they just kick the shit out of them tomorrow. And you know what? And what's going to be hysterical, and not in a bad way, but in a good way, is like if John gets lit up tomorrow, and it's, he's pulled after the third inning or like midway through an inning or something like that, he's going to get another massive standing O, and it's not going to be because he's getting chased from the game. It's just going to be because it's John Lester. You know what I mean? So like, that's going to be cool. And even tying it all in, right? Like, what perfect place for them to go then to Washington with Davey Martinez, who obviously was a part of that Chicago Cubs World Series team, was a huge part of that coaching staff for such a long time. So it's going to be a fun, week, 4 days of games at Wrigley Field for, I'm sure, not only for the fans, but for them.
If they pull them in the third, and I don't know if they still do this at Wrigley, but do they still play Hit the Road Jack when pitchers get chased early? Whoever is director for the audio or fan experience, there better be none of that.
And there won't
give him a silence. We'll let him have his ovation, even leaving. With that said, too, even if you went out and told the Cubs to shove it, went like 7 innings and shut out baseball, I think we would sickly get some enjoyment out of that.
Yes.
As much as maybe it's a 0-0 game and some random guy, ends up, who plays for the Nationals, relief pitcher comes and gives up a home run late. Maybe that's the best scenario for them winning, other than, hitting John Lester around. But the Cubs need to win some ball games, and we're looking at 2021 here. Looking back, we'll give him the ovation, but either way, he deserves it.
Absolutely. You can appreciate the past, but still root for the present and look ahead to the future. And I agree with you there, man. I hope the Cubs still get a big W tomorrow. But it'll be cool seeing what they've put together for John and for Kyle in their first trip back to Wrigley, since they were let go by the team after the 2020 season. So, well, man, without further ado, I do want to remind everybody that Cubs on Tap is the official Cubs podcast of the On Tap Sports Network. You can go ahead and check out all of our great literary and podcasting works over at www.ontapsportsnet.com and at OnTapSportsNet on social media. You can follow the pod-specific accounts on both Twitter and Instagram. We are at Cubbies, that's Cubbies, on tap. And you can follow myself at Loose on Tap. And you can follow Juice at Juice on Tap on Twitter. Honestly, the best namesake you could possibly have when Juice and I are on the shows, because it's the Juice and Loose show, and I always appreciate that myself. But and once again, and not only do we have great Cubs coverage, ladies and gentlemen, but we also have great full Chicago sports coverage. So you can check out all of that once again, www.ontapsportsnet.com and at OnTapSportsNet on social media. The On Tap Sports Network. Go ahead and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you so much for joining Juice and I today for the show. Juice, always a pleasure, sir. Absolute pleasure to be on the mic with you today. The Cubs do win today in Detroit, a final score of 5-1 over the Tigers, and take 2 of 3 in the series. They will be back tomorrow on Monday, May 17th at beautiful Wrigley Field, as we mentioned, to open a 4-game set with the Washington Nationals. And we will be back with you after that game as well. So from myself, from Juice, thank you once again. And Juice, let's go Cubbies.
Let's go Cubbies.